all of those can be different depending on the bomb maker. And bomb makers, when it comes to terrorist organizations and terror attacks, the bomb makers are very important. I mean, they're a valuable commodity to these terrorist organizations because people can try to make a bomb, and there's a lot of information material that's online. ISIS and Al Qaeda, they put out these magazines that tell people and teach them how to build a bomb in their mother's kitchen and so on. But sometimes it doesn't work. And we've seen a number of these situations where people try to build bombs and they just don't work. It happened in New York City. It's happened a number of places all over the world. And so the bomb signature gives an indication as to whether it's an orchestrated bomb that we've seen many times from a certain terrorist organization. Is it the kind of bomb that came from one of these magazines or the information online? That's very important. And the bomb techs that are being deployed out there, that many of whom I've worked with here in the U.S., they're able to look at the forensics. And that's why it's so important with what they're doing. They got to be very careful for all the different types of material that is residual from the explosion to be able to determine what does that tell you about the bomb signature, because that could also indicate who committed this attack, who built the bomb, how did they get the information.
After a bomb goes off, can you still get DNA or fingerprints off of a bomb?
Depending on what kind of material is left, it is possible. Absolutely. It all depends on how the person who was building the bomb touched it, and then where did they touch it, and what are the investigators able to retrieve. So again, this gets back to the crime scene. And this is a massive crime scene because every little piece of material, they're going to be combing that whole area to try to find everything that they can that could potentially be a piece of material that's part of that explosive device that can ultimately be analyzed by these explosive experts and to see if there's any kind of DNA, any kind of signature, and that helps with the investigation.
Ray Kelly also touched on social media and trying to scour social media at this point. What would, if it were a U.S. agency, what would be going on right now to try to track down if there was any online activity? We saw it after San Bernardino that very quickly, Syed Farouk, Tashfeen Malik, they were able to find their online activity, pledging allegiance to members of ISIS in that case, and it began to lead down that road. What do you do to try to track this down? How important is social media early on these days?
So, social media is very important. There's going to be a whole team, if not a large group of investigators, analysts that are going to just be pouring through all social media. They've got a number of these software packages that can troll through social media using, keywords like Ariana Grande, concert, explosive device, explosions, various keywords that are going to be trolling through all social media. And they're not just going to be looking at today, yesterday, a week before. They're probably going to be going back, 3 months, 6 months, maybe even as far back as once it was announced that the Ariana Grande concert was going to take place at that location. That could be the trigger for the investigators to say, okay, once it was announced, was there any talk on social media as far as there's going to be this concert and so on? That's going to be part of the investigation, and they're going to look at any kind of reference to the concert and that location with some keywords, explosions, and so on. That'll be part of this situation that we have here that occurred.
You have to look at it and say, how callous could they be to go to a concert if this does end up being a terrorist attack filled with young children, young families, a lot of teenagers, teenage girls, and to attack there. But there's also that chance that they didn't care what the venue was. They just knew it was a packed house and that they were going there. Is there a chance that in the end a terrorist says, we don't care what it is, they're just going to where there are a lot of people?
Well, you're exactly right, Alex. They looked at this target, I'm sure, as a place where there's a lot of people, packed stadium. So you got that going for the terrorists. That's what they're looking for. They're always looking for maximum effect, maximum casualties. But the Ariana Grande concert, Ariana Grande is a huge deal here in the U.S. and worldwide. My daughter loves her. And so I know what the people that were there at that concert, I know what they were going for. This was a major event. And this is known all over the world hurt, going out on the road, having concerts. This is a high-profile event here. So not only are they getting maximum casualties, but it's also a major event, a major entertainment event and stadium here. And that is what they're looking for. Just like 9/11, they're targeting airlines, they're targeting New York City, the Capitol, the Pentagon. They're targeting major places, high profile. This is exactly what they're looking for, these terrorist organizations, and that's probably what got them to this place here.
If you're just joining us right now, it is 2 o'clock in the morning in the UK, and police are trying to piece together what happened outside Manchester Arena at the end of an Ariana Grande concert just before 10:35 at night, local time there. Police were called to reports of an explosion at Manchester Arena. So far at this hour, 19 people have been confirmed dead, around 50 others injured. It's being treated as a terrorist incident until police know otherwise. We are hearing from our own Tom Rivers, who is in London, that there could be a news conference coming up any time now, 2 o'clock in the morning there, that police and officials are planning on finally updating what did go on and what folks need to know in that area. Police have said very little, except for these two fairly general statements that they have put out tonight about any of the circumstances. A short time ago, there was a controlled explosion that was done by police. They thought it was another suspicious device outside Manchester Arena. Turned out to be a pile of clothing. There was nothing suspicious, nothing dangerous with it once they were able to get up and take a look at it. ABC's Tom Rivers live in London. And Tom, we await this news conference now to hopefully get more information.
You're absolutely right. And again, people will say, look, it looks exactly like a terrorist incident. And it's starting to stack up that way. But we wait until the officials actually say that. Again, sadly, we'll be looking at the numbers, Alex. 50 injured. Some of them more than likely are in serious condition. Sadly, those numbers may be going up. People still trying to make sure that they've hooked up with their loved ones, et cetera, et cetera. So there are a lot of different threads that the local community is looking at this stage of the game. A huge, as you can imagine, police presence down there right now. They'll be looking into all kinds of nooks and crannies, making sure that everything that is there should be there. Alluded to earlier, some of the attacks going back to the 70s and 80s here on the mainland. IRA attacks, they got rid of the heavy metal cast iron waste bins here, trash cans. They got rid of those. Oftentimes you'll only see a metal ring with a plastic bag for trash, because if that goes, there will be no quote-unquote shrapnel. So they're used to dealing with that over here. But again, this investigation is only beginning. There's going to be scores of police that are going to be appearing over various aspects, evidential, forensics, you name it, in the coming days. There's going to be no leave up there, and people are going to be working long hours.
Tom, I want to play for you right now the sound of the scene as people were running out. Here's what it sounded like. You can imagine the concern there on the loudspeaker. They're telling people to be calm and to be calm as they're going out. There were some who were jumping over the stands to get out, falling a fair distance as they were jumping over to get out as quickly as they could in a scene that had to be horrific by all indications now. 19 people we know have been confirmed dead, around 50 others injured. And there is, at this hour, early morning in the UK, Tom, an emergency meeting going on right now.
Yeah, senior officials in the Home Office. That's kind of one below the full cabinet. But yes, that's one of the top, if you will, gathering of officials for law and order. They're going to be briefed. They want to know exactly down to the second what's going on, what's the state of play. And that would be certainly all that information would later, probably just in a few minutes later, be briefed to the public, waiting on this press conference up in Manchester. So we all kind of have a starting point. We know exactly where we're going in this thing, where this thing is going. As we've seen in the past, if it is a terrorist attack, we may have an early claim of responsibility. There may be one days later. They take different forms. But a lot of moving parts in this particular story, and we're just waiting for the next chapter to be written.
The mayor of Greater Manchester, Mayor Andy Burnham, has just tweeted out saying, "My heart goes out to families who have lost loved ones. My admiration to our brave emergency services. A terrible night for our great city." Back to Steve Gomez, formerly of the FBI, now an ABC News consultant. And Steve, Tom mentioned there that the police obviously would be looking for, if they don't have it already, a claim of responsibility. We were talking a few moments ago about social media. How important does social media come into trying to find that claim of responsibility if this was a terror attack?
Well, the law enforcement agencies, as I mentioned before, they're scouring social media. They're looking at all those radical sites, seeing if there's any kind of chatter, any claim of responsibility, any support for whoever it was that committed this act. So they'll be looking for that. Oftentimes we've seen it happen. The claim of responsibility a day, 2 days later. Sometimes it's gone, almost a week. So the fact that we haven't seen a claim of responsibility, that's not necessarily something that's unusual. We also have to consider the fact that we don't know if they actually have identified whether it was a suicide bomb, whether it was somebody who left something there and then left. That could factor into whether, if this is determined ultimately to be a terrorist attack, did ISIS or Al Qaeda, did they support this? Are they prepared to claim responsibility? Because if there is somebody who just left the device and then took off, now you've got a manhunt. Now you've got the potential for even more widespread investigation going all throughout the UK to ensure that they are contained, they're not allowed to leave the country, or not in hiding somewhere. So those are all the different aspects that go into not only law enforcement's approach to the social media research and trying to figure out claims of responsibility, but also from the terrorist side, what they have done in the past and how they approach that type of responsibility claim.
Steve Gomez. Steve, thanks. We'll come back to you in just a moment. Our partners at the BBC spoke with Imran, who was outside the concert venue waiting to pick up his partner and his daughter. Here's what he had to say.
I was just waiting outside on New Bridge Street. I got there about 20 past 10 maybe. I texted my partner at about 28 minutes past saying, telling her where I was. And she says, she just finished the last song, we're on our way out. So literally minutes later, I just heard this big explosion, and I just saw my partner and my daughter running towards me. And my daughter was screaming, crying, and my partner said, just quickly, let's go, quickly, there's been an explosion, let's go quick as we can. And I just couldn't get out of there quick enough. And I just saw these people come running down the stairs, screaming, pushing each other, screaming, crying, and it was manic. But I only heard one explosion. That's all I heard, one explosion.
So, Imran, your partner and your daughter had literally been seconds out of the building when it went off. Yeah, literally. Well, she was at the top of the stairs when the explosion went off, and she said she grabbed hold of my daughter's hand and literally run down the stairs with her. Unfortunately, because my car's quite distinctive, she saw it straight away. And I was parked from the door, maybe 10 foot, if that, from the door where they were all exiting from. And there were just people running out in front of me screaming, and I just assumed that they'd seen a celebrity or seen, because minutes before a coach had passed me, and I think it was Ariana Grande's coach. So I just thought maybe they'd seen a celebrity or maybe seen her and they're all coming running out, just to see it like some teenage girls do. But then when I saw my partner come running towards me, screaming, and my daughter was crying, I just knew something wasn't right. But I'd already heard the explosion, but I thought it was a pyrotechnic going off. Like when you hear concerts and when it all finishes and something goes off, to say good night or whatever. I assumed it was that. I really, really did. Because you could hear the vibration from the music from when I was stood outside. But then obviously you heard this big explosion, and it was just manic after that. But we fortunately got away. But it's taken me over 2.5 hours to get back home. That's extraordinary. And just as you were leaving the scene, could you see scores of people running out onto the street?
Oh, hundreds of people. It was just manic. They were just pushing each other out the way. People just trying to get out of the way. It was just manic. It really, really was, yeah.
And when you say it took you 2.5 hours to get home, you're in Leeds now, are you? How far away?
That's right.
For people who don't know the region.
About 45 miles. Well, it took me 45 minutes to get from my house to Manchester Arena. But yeah, it took me over 2 hours to get home.
And did you have any idea, when now you hear what has happened and how terrible the night has been inside Manchester Arena? I mean, how do you respond to that? How do you react?
I feel sick. My partner won't even speak to one of our journalists on the phone. She's laid in bed. She's in bits. You know, she's absolutely in bits. She's saying if minutes later I could have been caught up in that. I could have split up from our daughter. You know, her daughter comes to the car. She's cried herself to sleep. She actually wanted to sleep in bed with us, and she's 12 years old, and she's been looking forward to this since Christmas. This was a Christmas present for the tickets that we bought of Christmas. And she's been counting the days down, and she's had a great evening. And this was, you know, it's crazy. It's absolutely crazy what's going on. You know, kids are at a concert, and there's some absolute lunatics doing what they're doing. It's crazy.
And I'd imagine that there were many, many other girls like your daughter that age who were fans of Ariana Grande.
Yeah, I mean, like I say, I got there about 20 past 10, and it were already busy outside with people leaving early. I assumed it must have finished early, and because I texted my partner saying it must have finished because there's literally, I'd say there were about 70, 80 people already outside. And she's like, no, the last song's still on. She texted me back saying, no, the last song's still playing. It's just about to be over and we'll be out. And so I texted her at 10:28, and she texted me back, and I left that scene within 4 minutes. I'd gone. I just quickly sped off because I was right next to the traffic lights. They were on green. As soon as I got in the car, I just got my way through everyone and made it through, really fortunately.
Did you imagine that there were casualties inside from what you heard and saw?
No. I didn't until we just got near the motorway and we'd heard on the news that there'd been fatalities, and you know, my daughter obviously heard it on the radio, my partner heard it on the radio, and they both just burst out in tears, both of them. For
a 12-year-old girl at her first concert, this must be very traumatic.
Oh, she's in bits. She's like, I want to get out of Manchester, Dad, and just get me home. She's absolutely in bits. She really, really is. You know, I mean, we've got home. We've been home since I think about 12:30 when we got through the door, 1:45, and you know, we haven't got to sleep. We're not even tired. It's just going around in his head. What could have happened? What's happened? You know, and what's happened to the people? I've just read on the news about the kids in the hotel. You know, they can't find the parents and the guardians. It's absolutely crazy. And that could have been my daughter. You know, and I wasn't even going to pick them up. They were going to get the train home, and I'd meet them in Leeds. But I decided to go pick them up, and I'm just so glad I was there to get them. You know, it's just what's going on in our heads now is what if, and it shouldn't be like that, but it is, unfortunately.
Imran, what did your partner say she experienced when she was rushing out? What was it like? What was the explosion like from her perspective?
She just said she just heard this bang, and she just literally grabbed hold of my daughter's hand and just run down the stairs. That's it. That's all she said. She was literally feet away from me. She got to the top of the stairs where the exit was, and the explosion happened. And like I said, it was just one eye. We just heard one explosion. Definitely heard one explosion. And like I said, I were from the explosion, and when she heard it, to getting in my car, it were seconds, because I were parked literally 10 foot from the exit, from the door, on New Bridge Street, right from the door. I were parked literally across the road from the door. So there were, you know, she didn't have time to react. She literally grabbed my daughter's hand and saw all the people screaming. And she, you know, as soon as the explosion happened, though, my daughter started screaming, she said, and started crying. So she grabbed hold of her and just literally run down the stairs with her and got away. But they knew something wasn't right. They definitely knew something wasn't right. They weren't sure what it was, but they knew they said something wasn't right.
I'm Ron, talking to Imran, to our partners at the BBC there. An emotional story, concerned about his daughter, his partner, as well as they came running out of the venue to get out of Manchester Arena as the explosion right after it happened. Any moment now, after 2 o'clock in the morning in the UK, police are expected to give a news conference to update the latest and to give some indication of what may have gone on. The latest update we have from police is 19 people have been confirmed dead, around 50 others injured, currently being treated as a terrorist incident until police know otherwise as they are beginning their investigation. We go back now to Tom Rivers live in London. And Tom, we continue to wait for this news conference.
Exactly, and Manchester is in shock right now. Old industrial city, kind of the heart of the Industrial Revolution. And textiles a big part of the history of that community. Americans probably know Manchester from a particular soccer team, Manchester United, and their rivals Manchester City. And everybody there is saying, how does it happen here? And that's always a question asked wherever you go, wherever these incidents happen. But they really are bewildered up there. Many people very, very emotional being touched by this and shaking their heads. And the fact that there was a very, very young, as you can well imagine, demographic at this concert last night here. People just in disbelief, let's put it that way.
And distance-wise, what, about a 4-hour drive between London and Manchester?
Yeah, it's a straight shot up. It's about 4 hours. Middle of the night, you can go a fair old clip. Drive time is going to take you longer, but yeah, it's a straight journey, and again, it's one that usually if you might hop on a train, but of course train traffic is going to be snarled up in that neck of the woods tomorrow. So that's basically taken out of the equation. People are going to be driving or flying.
And you touched on it a short time ago. When it comes to hiding places for an explosive device, that the thing that strikes me when I've been to London, that you don't see garbage cans around, and you don't see a lot of planters and things that you might see in the U.S. because of concerns over explosive devices.
Exactly, and that goes back to the 70s and early 80s with the IRA. We had those incidents in the past where those pieces of metal, the container, became lethal shrapnel. So oftentimes you will just see plastic bags hanging from a metal ring. And if that goes, it dissipates. There's not going to be anything in the container itself that can hit people.
Go back to Steve Gomez now, formerly of the FBI, now an ABC News consultant. And Steve, one thing that one of the witnesses talked to us about earlier tonight, saying that the thing that struck him, he knew it was serious immediately when he saw armed police, because you don't see armed police very often in the UK, unlike the U.S., where every patrol officer has a gun. Every incident like this, after the Parliament attack, we heard the debate over should they be armed, shouldn't they. It may come up again if somebody could have stopped this, but it's a debate that comes up every time, and still police aren't armed in the UK. Why not?
Well, it's more of a public policy question that, the UK is going to have to examine and try to figure out, does it help prevent these types of situations from occurring if you see more officers, security officials that are armed? It might. It very well may help in the prevention aspect, because at the end of the day, when you look at these situations, you're always going to want to prevent them from occurring. You want to get ahead of them. We learned this after 9/11. That was when I was in the FBI. That was the first thing that we went to under the leadership of former Director Mueller, where he said we cannot let this kind of situation happen again. We have to prevent it, and we have to do everything ahead of time to ensure that we are preventing these things from occurring. Now, if that means that when you have large events, stadium, ball games, soccer games, a concert like this, if that means that you're going to have law enforcement officials, you're going to have security officials that are going to have, weapons to basically show force that they are there and ready for anything, then that's something they have to examine. But it's a public policy question. They have to determine whether that is something that they want to have their citizens see and be prepared to accept, because it's different there. And it's something that we almost accept here in the U.S. When you were going to the Super Bowl, when you were going to a major event, we've got, the NBA playoffs that are coming up now. And there's always going to be huge crowds around the stadium as people walk up. That is something that we are prepared for as Americans, and it's something they have to consider out there.
Steve, thank you. Let's go back to another former FBI agent, Brad Garrett, who's joining us once again, now ABC News consultant. And Brad, we're 3 hours into this now. The scene has to have calmed down by this point, unless there is another device that is found somewhere, as police try to put together what happened. 3 hours into it, where should they be at this point?
Well, they may well have an idea who did this. Partly based on cameras, eyewitness identification, sources, And, I'm going to guess they found this other device, which may also give them some leads. How was it built? What explosives were used in it? Et cetera, which may lead them towards someone.
And we should clarify the other item that they thought might have been a device that they were doing a controlled detonation on turned out to be a pile of clothing, so may not be a whole lot of help to them, but they may have fragments and be doing the searching for a bomb signature on the other device. This could take a while, obviously, to try to track down if somebody is responsible for this, if it was a bomb, but in the early hours, what's most important for trying to track somebody down? Is it studying that bomb? Is it talking to intelligence sources? Is it looking at social media, or all of the above?
It's clearly all of the above, and you have to be able to do these things simultaneously. That's why it is key that you have a team together of people from various agencies and organizations that can feed you information as they get it, so that a command post has a comprehensive picture as to what this really is. Because the problem we have, or they have, is that, okay, they had a device go off 3+ hours ago. Is this person or persons part of a group of which tomorrow morning they want to blow something else up? So, the pressure is on to ID who did this, where they were located, where the bombs came from, or maybe where they were assembled, and get that at hand, because the last thing, obviously, the police want is to have to deal with some other horrible incident tomorrow morning during rush hour.
We talked to Steve about it a short time ago, but when it comes to who would do something like this outside of an arena with children, with families inside who had gone to see typically an Ariana Grande show, you spent your time in the FBI doing a lot of analysis on people, behavioral analysis, and what does this tell you? If they knew who was inside, maybe they didn't, and if it was, in fact, a terror attack, they just wanted to look for a target with a lot of people inside. But if they did know, what does it tell you?
Well, you have to be clear about one thing here, is that people who commit these type of acts do not look upon the folks they killed, whether they're children, parents, etc., as human. They see them as the enemy because they're not part of, quote, whatever group the bomber is from. And so that is the brainwash part of this, is that it just doesn't register for them that they're basically killing harmless children as they go about this. I will tell you that these typically are troubled people with marginal backgrounds, have not probably been successful, get caught up in an extremist group, or this even conceivably could just be an individual that maybe has some loose ties philosophically to a terrorist organization, but maybe did it on their own. I mean, as we talked earlier, Alex, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to walk into a crowd and light yourself up. You just basically have to have the guts to do it, and then that's about it.
Brad, thank you. We just got a statement from Theresa May saying that the Prime Minister is saying, quote, "We are working to establish the full details of what is being treated by the police as an appalling terrorist attack. All our thoughts are with the victims and their families of those who have been affected." ABC's Tom Rivers live in London. First time we're hearing somebody, in this case the Prime Minister, say this was an apparent terror attack.
Exactly. And, of course, we are in the midst of a very intense, very truncated, short election campaign. A lot of issues on the table, a lot of inside baseball domestic issues. But, again, terrorism, if in fact that's what it certainly is going to be a talking point. It may not be the main point as this campaign rolls on into the early part of June, but it's going to be a component. There's going to be a talking point in the discussion up and down this country. Is the approach correct? Is there anything that possibly that can be done that isn't being done? And it's something that a lot of people are talking about.
We are waiting at the moment for a news conference that we expect to happen anytime now, updating the latest. The most current numbers that we have at this hour, 19 people have been confirmed dead, around 50 others injured. after a terror attack. Now, the Prime Minister, Theresa May, saying an apparent terror attack outside of Manchester Arena tonight at 10:35 local time in the UK. It's now almost 2:30 in the morning in the UK. At the end of an Ariana Grande concert, as people were filing out outside in the open area outside of Manchester Arena, apparently a bomb of some kind, an explosion went off, killing those 19 people. Hopefully the number does not go up at this point. Around 50 others injured. The numbers there as we await this news conference. And we've been talking about it for quite some time now. We have not heard that it's over yet, Tom Rivers, live in London, but an emergency meeting that's been underway.
Exactly. So maybe that's why the police are holding back on their timing a little bit. They want to get that Home Office briefing done first, get the government into the loop exactly where the lay of the information is at this stage of the game, who might have done it, what does intelligence say, all of those factors. And then they will hold the police briefing up in Manchester. One, because a lot of people up there are still awake now. They're nervous. They don't know what to do. They want to have the latest information. Then they can go to bed and then figure out what happens tomorrow. The city's going to be on edge tomorrow as well.
And we have heard at this point the train station will be closed tomorrow. We can understand, could understand if, and we don't know yet, schools are closed and whatnot, that this is now going to be a country, a city specifically, but a country very much on standby.
Exactly. And what can you do? I suppose you can raise the threat level one more to the highest level. In practical terms, you can probably eke out a few more police to put on the beat. All leave can be canceled, et cetera, et cetera. But again, you've got the backdrop of there's been a lot of police that have been laid off for the past couple of years here. That is another campaign issue here in the country right now. And what else can you possibly? Intelligence comes to the fore. That is very, very important. Keeping tabs on people, as we've seen in countless examples, Alex, from France to Germany to the UK. Oftentimes there are people that certainly at one stage of the game were on the radar of security types, and for whatever reason, sometimes they drop off. They've got a bulging in tray that they have to keep looking at other people. If they feel that some of them are not going to be doing anything, they drop off. That may or may not be the case here, but oftentimes it is. And a lot of these people are radicalized in prison. A lot of them have just common criminal backgrounds. Something snaps. Something turns them into an extremist. And we may be looking at it at this stage. Again, let's kind of hold back a little bit till the police talk, though, hopefully in a few minutes.
Very true. Tom Rivers, thank you. If I can go back now to Rich Frankel, formerly of the FBI, now an ABC News consultant. Rich, 3 hours in now, what do police need to know by this point to get this investigation going?
So now they've made a determination, most likely, what the explosion was. Hopefully they're now in close enough that they can start identifying what caused that explosion, at least a rudimentary determination as to what caused the explosion. And then also, at this point, hopefully we're starting to get back some intel from the analysts and other enforcement officers who have been, scouring the internet, scouring, other files, determining if anything was mentioned about arenas, about Manchester. That should all start. That should really be coming in now. We're at that point where the investigation, you can say, is up and running. And then at this point, what the investigators will do is going out and starting to run down those leads. Are there people that they need to go out and keep an eye on? Are there people that they need to go out there and interview? Are there other techniques that they now have to engage to determine if other people are out there who may want to cause a secondary device, if in fact this was a terrorist act? Again, even though I guess the Home Secretary said that it could be a terrorist act, or probably was. Until we hear it from the law enforcement, from the police, it's still speculation.
Sure, and we've been talking about it, but how important does social media come into this early stage play here to figure out, okay, which direction do they need to be going in? Oh,
there are going to be analysts and officers assigned specifically to social media. They're going to be running down every connection that they can. They're going to be looking, like I said, at Manchester, at the actual artist. Who tweeted out about her, who made comments about her on social media. They're going to go through the entire background on anything that could have come back on social media to this event. And then from there, they're going to start showing connections. They're going to see who's connected to who, and then they're going to start running down those leads. Social media today is as important as going out and doing, a brick-and-mortar search, where you're actually going out and doing investigations and going out and talking to people.
Would there be a possible connection to, and hear me out here for a second, but to the actual artist, Ariana Grande? Or most likely in a scenario like this, is it just find the most amount of people as you can in one spot and hurt as many people as possible?
I'm not, as somebody else who was previously on said, I'm not an expert in music. So I don't know if she's done something that would cause anyone to specifically target her concerts, based upon her music. I just have no idea. Most of this is it's opportunity. They maybe they did some surveillances on the location, and they saw that at concerts, after concerts, it's a great opportunity. As Steve Gomez said, people are coming out of the concert. They start massing at the exits. Maybe somebody did that surveillance and was able to identify that this was a good opportunity. So these are the things that may have happened. It also is possible that this is a lone person who is in the area, and so therefore it's a target of opportunity because that person just needed to go to that location and didn't have to travel away. And again, we don't know what happened. I mean, is this a suicide bomber? And the investigation as far as a threat ends there. Is this part of a larger group of ISIS or Al-Qaeda, and therefore the investigation will follow on? That we're really too early in the investigation to make that determination.
Yeah, just so many unknowns at this point. Hopefully police, at some point, they're promising a news conference. Hopefully they'll be able to answer some of that. Rich, thank you so much. And we go back now live to London and ABC's Tom Rivers. And Tom, any new information coming in?
No, at this stage, we're kind of just hanging in there and waiting for the latest. Manchester, the people there are on edge right now and worried and concerned, and they want some information too. And of course, it's nobody on the police force is sleeping tonight. Everybody is working hard, and they want to strike while the iron is hot. We found that in other investigations, that the critical time of trying to glean all of these various leads from different sources is right now, right? And they want to knock on as many doors as they can. They don't want it sliding down. You think back to December in Berlin, and some of the leads there were followed up weeks and weeks later. They say they don't want to do that. They want to do whatever they can as quickly as possible, sprinting at the beginning, because this is not a marathon. They want to get answers as quickly as possible while things are still warm, things are still hot out there.
4-hour drive away in London. The situation there tonight, this morning now, the hours in the UK. What's the situation at this point? Heightened alert there as well?
Yeah, people are kind of, you see a lot of lights up and down the street. People are up and watching the news, listening to the radios right now, shaking their heads, saddened in disbelief, as you can well imagine. But again, who knows what's going to happen down the road? Could there be something down here? Maybe yes, maybe no. Is this an individual? Is this a group? We don't know. A whole lot of questions out there at this stage.
Yeah, a whole lot of things that we just don't know at this point. And the UK has been on a high state of alert for another terror attack ever since the attack on the House of Parliament in March. And the UK at its second highest state of alert. We kind of know what that means on the U.S. side. What does the second highest state of alert mean in general on the UK side, Tom?
Well, it means it's just about everything other than they have information that an attack is, in fact, imminent. So it means they're pretty darn assured that something's going to be coming. They just may not know exactly when it's coming. So it is pretty high. And comparing and contrasting, years ago, 30 years ago, if you saw a policeman with a firearm, people were taken aback. That was an incredibly rare scene. It is becoming more commonplace now, especially in the tourist areas. You see handguns. You also see rifles, automatic weapons, and people are getting used to seeing that. They're getting used to seeing police wearing bulletproof vests. You go to the airport, you're probably going to see maybe patrolling in pairs. Police now with automatic weapons. It is, I guess, part of the new normal, and people are gradually here in a pretty gunless society becoming acclimatized to that over a number of years, and it is something that has become part of the new 21st century normal, certainly in the UK.
And jump over to Steve Gomez. Steve, not to harp on that, but it still amazes me because patrolling in pairs, wearing bulletproof vests, and with handguns is something that every American expects out of every police officer.
Yeah, absolutely, especially with any kind of special event, whether it's a football game, baseball game, the NBA playoffs that are going on right now, any kind of major concert. You pretty much now have accepted the fact in America that if there is a major crowd that's going to gather, it's a potential terrorist target because they're looking for maximum casualty. And when you have a group of people, that's potentially a target. I mean, I've mentioned a number of times in the past how LA Live in downtown Los Angeles, I go there, every once in a while with my family, and it's a huge crowd especially crossing the street. So, you're concerned about that crowded area, whether it's waiting in line to get into the Staples Center, whether you are going to one of the places for dinner and you're crossing the street, you have to be concerned about vehicles because we've seen vehicle attacks that have occurred. And so those terrorists that are using vehicles, they're looking for those crowds similar to what we have in downtown LA, similar to what we have anywhere in the world. Wherever there's a crowd, that's a potential target. And so law enforcement and all the government agencies that are out there that are dealing with securing these special events have to be thinking along those lines that in order to secure these locations, it starts with what is the terrorist target? And if that means that if any place that has a crowd there, then you have to consider how do you go about locking that down, hardening the target, making sure that these terrorists aren't thinking about doing it so you can prevent it. And part of that could involve having armed law enforcement officers with long guns, with guns on their side, with the flak jackets, almost looking like a military presence. You have to consider whether that is something that's going to really help the cause there, in addition to all the other aspects of security measures that they put in place for special events.
On the sad end tonight, parents and relatives, friends posting notes on social media now with pictures of young concert goers asking for anyone who may have seen them. There are some stories of people doing good tonight in Manchester. Taxi drivers turning off their meters to give people rides away from the scene. Local residents offering rides or shelter to people leaving the area. Hotels have been taking people in, including children. We talked not too long ago to a hotel manager who said they were taking in children, working to reunite those children at this point, that they were still underway trying to get parents back to their kids who had been at the Ariana Grande concert. A number of different witnesses who we are hearing from. We just heard a few moments ago, our partners at the BBC interviewed Mickey, who was at the concert with his girlfriend. Here's what he had to say.
Mickey, obviously, you must be very shaken as to what has happened tonight, what you saw. Just help us piece together what happened and let us know what you saw.
Yeah, I was there with my girlfriend and my daughter. It was actually a Christmas present for my daughter. And just as Ariana Grande left the stage, we were just all we were in block 113 on Royale, so we were quite close to the front. So we were walking up the stairs where everyone was just leaving, and then just as we got out into the area where the toilets are and all the shops where they sell all the t-shirts and caps and everything, we were just walking across there, and we heard this, this big bang. We didn't obviously know what it was. I did think, I did wonder whether it were, a terror attack or
I didn't know whether they were dismantling the stage and that they maybe dropped something, and which caused a big bang. And then all of a sudden, there were just screaming, and people started running from behind us. To sort of like there were hundreds of people running.
And Mickey, just give us a sense. Are you safe now? Are you safe with your girlfriend and daughter? I hope and assume that you're out of the area.
Yeah, we're back in Leeds now. We drove to the event, so we got out. When we got out, I actually grabbed hold of my daughter and said run, and we were running. Like there were obviously hundreds of people screaming and running. It was just mayhem. We were running down all the stairs, trying to get out. And then I looked behind me and I couldn't see my girlfriend because there were that many people just running. And we got outside and I crossed straight over the road. And I was looking back and I couldn't see her, so I got my phone out to ring her. And then luckily, she was ringing me as I pulled my phone out. So she came across and we walked back up to where we parked the car.
And your daughter, I'm not sure how old she is, but she must be a huge fan of Ariana Grande. But she must now be very shaken to what's happened. How do you even come to terms or explain what did happen?
Yeah, she's a massive fan. She's loved her for years. She was really excited. She's got all her albums and everything. So it was, like I say, I got it for Christmas. She's been looking forward to it since December. She came out, from school today. We drove over. And obviously she was shaken up. She didn't know what we're going to. She's 9 years old, so quite scary for her. She was saying, what's happening? When I was running, I just said, just keep running. And when we got outside, obviously she saw loads of other parents and kids crying and shouting. So, she was in tears when we got outside.
And I understand at one point you lost your girlfriend, so you must have been at a state of confusion for most of it. How much information were you getting in the aftermath of the explosion? There
were nothing. I don't think really anybody knew what had happened. I didn't know whether, when everybody started running, I thought maybe it was a gunshot, and people had seen it and were just running for their lives. But nobody knew exactly, because where we were, I don't know where it actually happened, but we heard it, but we didn't see anything. Or I've heard people saying that they felt things. We just literally heard a huge bang. So we didn't know where it had come from, what it was. So it was just everybody else running that made me run, and I thought maybe it was a gunshot. But obviously, still until we got in the car and put the radio on, we didn't know what had happened.
Yeah, Mickey talking to the BBC there. He was at the concert with his girlfriend, describing the scene. You hear about getting out, the evacuation, how chaotic it was. We just heard via text a few moments ago from another young woman who was inside, and I'm going to read you what she has to say. She says it was shortly after Ariana went on stage, and off stage rather, and everyone began to leave when there was suddenly a huge explosion. Everyone panicked and ran, but we all got stuck in a big crowd on the stairs, couldn't get out. People began crying and screaming. There was a weird pause where people started shouting that there was a balloon or a speaker. That's why I took a video, she says, because people began to joke around thinking we had all ran and screamed over a balloon. More people ran, so we all panicked again. When we got outside, it was a mix between people crying and running and people reassuring one another, saying nothing to worry about. Then all of a sudden, loads of police cars came in, and we began to think it was more serious. Police cars arrived. Everyone began screaming and running in every direction. We didn't know what to do, so I ran to a taxi. My friend followed. Police were blocking off streets, so it took us a while to get out of town center. It is that evacuation that we've been hearing about quite a bit. Steve Gomez, formerly of the FBI, now ABC News consultant, and that evacuation that can be dangerous as well.
Yes, and especially when people are disoriented because they're thinking that it's one thing, that there's not a problem. Then all of a sudden they think that it's another, and you immediately go into survival mode. And that tends to be what you see when you have these types of stampedes, and people start just, they go into this panic mode, and they just try to get out of there as fast as possible, and then people get hurt. I mean, in this type of situation, you almost have to just try to stay calm, stay in place, and try to evaluate what is occurring, depending on where the sound is and what is going on. But again, this is late at night. Everybody's probably just, had a great time. They're now going from euphoria, watching Ariana Grande play, and then all of a sudden now it's over, and you just want to go home and you're tired. And so what you do isn't really clear in your mind as far as the information that you're hearing, whether it's a balloon or a speaker, and then all of a sudden you start to hear that maybe it was a bomb, or as people are leaving, they start to see blood, they start to see casualties on the floor. That is very traumatic, and now you're dealing with that situation, and you don't even know what to do. And that's probably what we are going to be hearing about from many more witnesses and victims in the next few days.
Potentially broken bones and whatnot in that case. And we've been hearing about it for quite some time, but we did just get a note that Greater Manchester Police are expected to make a statement shortly, not so much a news conference, but come out and make a statement to at least say basics of what they know and where we are at this point. Steve, what's your advice in all of your police tactics, FBI tactics, everything you learned, for folks to do in a situation like this? How do you get out without getting trampled and to make sure that you get out safely?
Well, it really starts with remaining calm. And you have to determine that if you are going to join the crowd and the mass in trying to get out, and there's a potential risk to you and your family members, your young children, not only of getting trampled, but they could potentially be going into another secondary device. And it looks like this second device that they did, the controlled explosion, was not an actual device. But if it was, the terrorists, their game plan is not only to plant a bomb somewhere, but they have the secondary devices in another place. And it's called secondary device for a reason, because they are anticipating people running out of the area and going into what would be the area where they're going to plant the secondary device. So you almost have to just calm down unless the threat is right in front of you, unless there is an active shooter that is coming your way. You almost have to stop and just evaluate the situation. And maybe sometimes it's better not to go anywhere. I mean, the fact is, inside the stadium, probably because of the security that they had of people going in, was fairly secure. Now, the chaos caused people to leave the area, and that could have put them in peril if there was another device, if there was, say, an explosion in one place, and then you had the terrorists in another place that were prepared for the people coming out with guns or with whatever other weaponry that they have. So those are the things that they have to consider. It starts by staying calm and evaluate the situation first.
So hard to do, though, in an instant where you think we've got to get out of here, and your instinct is to just run to safety into a more open area where you're not in a confined space. But so we'll, as we continue to wait for information here right now, we're going to have to see, as police are telling us that they are going to give us an update here momentarily, if the numbers have changed. The latest update that we have from police, 19 people confirmed dead, around 50 others injured, currently being treated as a terrorist incident until police know otherwise. Theresa May has tweeted out that this is an apparent terror attack. They believe it is a terror attack right now. ABC's Tom Rivers live in London. That coming on the heels of a meeting that has been going on for a number of hours, and now the country gets ready to respond to a terror attack since they believe it is.
Exactly, and we've heard countless times, especially with this threat level being so high for now the last few years. It isn't if you talk to anybody in Scotland Yard, they'll say, it isn't that will it happen or not. They'll say it is going to happen. The question is, where's it going to happen, and what's going to be the severity, et cetera, et cetera. And, if in fact it is a terrorist attack in Manchester, you think back at some of the other attacks. Paris, okay, symbolic target. Then it was down in Nice in July. Using totally unorthodox tactics down there. So it doesn't necessarily have to be in the capital of a country. It can be somewhere else. Why? Because it's not going to have as thorough a police presence, a footprint as large as it may be in Paris, or maybe in Berlin, or maybe in London.
Momentarily, we expect to hear from police in Manchester. Greater Manchester Police say that they do plan on giving a statement any moment. We are standing by for that. We would have to expect, Tom, that based on the limited information that they have put out tonight, we are 3-4 hours into this now, and they've given two very short written statements, one just saying that they're responding, another giving the number of 19 people dead, 50 injured, but not saying a whole lot else, that this is probably not going to be a widespread news conference, maybe a very short statement that they have to come out and read.
Exactly. I would expect exactly that. It may be a statement that's read out in about 1 minute, and that's it. They may update the numbers. They may still at that stage say it was an explosive event. We are investigating it. They may not even use the T word. But again, we'll have to just wait and see. But certainly people staying up in Manchester to hear the latest. People down here in London, same story.
Sure, as the country now begins to focus again on another terror attack not long after the House of Parliament attack that happened in March, a 4-hour drive away from where this is happening tonight. Tom, thank you. As we continue our coverage here at close to 3 o'clock in the morning, UK time, we're coming up on 10 o'clock at night, East Coast time, 7 o'clock in the Pacific time zone, as we await more details. There have been a lot of rumors coming out through the day. You can imagine with 21,000 people inside an arena, a lot of people saying things. Some of it has turned out to be true. Some of it has been completely wrong. A number of hotels around the Manchester arena have been taking in children, taking in families, reunifications happening. In other cases, they're not finding their loved ones, and they are on social media right now looking for those loved ones. Social media playing a big role in this, as it often does after a terror attack, if that's what this is, from both trying to search for the assailant and the people behind it, and also trying to reunite families that have been apart and separated because of this. Back to Steve Gomez, formerly of the FBI. Because the injured may very well be families and younger folks because of who was at Ariana Grande, does that make the response any more difficult from a law enforcement side?
Well, it does, because they're youth, and most law enforcement officials have children. Some don't, but most do. And just like myself, I've got a daughter who's 14 and loves Ariana Grande, and my wife's taken her to concerts just like that one. And this is very traumatic, so we can understand what everybody who went to that concert is going through right now. That makes it even harder, and especially if you're seeing the dead bodies or injured bodies of youngsters who are there to have a good time and are very excited about this. This is very traumatic for the law enforcement officials that are responding to the scene there, and they are going to work, as long as they have to. They're going to put in the work that needs to be done in order to provide them care. Same with the fire officials and the medical staff at the hospitals and so on. They're going to do everything they can to help those children and the families and the parents. But at the same time, the law enforcement officials, this is going to feed them as far as put fire in their heart to go out there and to work as hard as they have to hunt whoever it was that committed this act. I mean, this is exactly what we've seen in all the other terrorist attacks that we've seen here in the U.S., where the FBI, the Joint Terrorism Task Force, all the local police agencies, they're going to move heaven and earth, turn every stone, and make sure that they figure out what happened, who is responsible, and they're going to go after them. So it's traumatic. It's hard for them to deal with, but they are all professionals, and they're going to do their job, and they're going to do it very well, and they'll get to the bottom of this. And that's probably what they're talking about right now as they're preparing for this press release or press conference that they're going to have. And I'm sure we're going to be hearing about a lot more of what they're doing in the hours and the days to come.
We can only imagine how difficult it was for those inside the arena to really understand what was going on. We have heard from a number of them and seen postings online saying they didn't know what was happening right away. I went to a concert at Staples Center a couple of weeks ago, and at the end of it, your ears are ringing. You've been listening to pyrotechnics, to loud music nonstop, and you might think that it was something involved with that or taking apart the sound system since Ariana Grande had just ended. In this case, unfortunately, it wasn't just that there was an apparent terror attack, according to the Prime Minister. Police saying that they were treating it as a terrorist incident until police know otherwise. Possibly one explosive device that went off outside in an open area, just in a public area right outside of Manchester Arena as they continue to investigate now. Back to Tom Rivers live in London. And Tom, this is very slowly taking shape. No doubt the hour of the day is not helping there, that it's 3 o'clock in the morning.
Exactly. And again, I think it's going to be a sleepless night up and down the country. People are wanting to know the latest, and we keep seeing that this press conference keeps getting pushed back. Maybe it'll be at the top of this hour, but exactly that. Exactly what is behind this? Was it, in fact, a terrorist attack or not? Will we find out? Sadly, will the numbers rise among the dead and injured? But a traumatic story, too. If you listen to some of the eyewitnesses who often had their kids maybe 10 or 12 years old with them, something that's going to mark their psyche for their lifetime now. These kids are going to be, thinking back on this and as a sad event. Maybe in some cases the first concert they've ever been to. So it's hard to imagine if in fact it is a terrorist attack going after this particular young group of people that were gathered in Manchester last night.
19 people confirmed dead, around 50 others injured as police try to piece this together. What was this? Was it a terror attack? Was a bomb placed in that open area? Was it a suicide bomber? What was it? They are trying to determine that right now. The area of Manchester, Tom, describe that for us, that we're talking 4 hours outside of London. Mm-hmm. The area is what?
It's been rejuvenated over the years. It certainly went through if you will, a Rust Belt kind of if you will, living standard, if you will, for maybe the 70s and 80s. But it has been rebuilding, and there's a great going way back, turn of the century canal system there that was often filled with debris and mud. They've cleaned that up. They've gentrified it. It's become a really beautiful part of town in the center part of Manchester itself. A lot of universities, a lot of young people in Manchester. Has a pretty good nightlife. And as I say, it really was in this country, and you could say globally, it was where the Industrial Revolution really began. Textiles was their particular product, and it was shipped around the world. And of course, other aspects of the Industrial Revolution were refined in various parts of the UK. But that's what its history is. That's what it knows. And it's up on the northwest. It's not that far from Liverpool. And there's a great rivalry, as you know, between Manchester and Liverpool in terms of soccer, football up there. But yes, it is arguably the second largest city in Britain. That there's always a fight between Birmingham and Manchester because the populations are so close. Who's the second largest? I think Manchester wins by a sliver. But it's a beautiful place, and the people there are certainly going to be shocked. And working through the next few days is going to be difficult. Who knows what's going to be? Memorial services in a few days, et cetera, et cetera. But it is sad, and something terrible has visited that fair city this week.
The Department of Homeland Security is drafting a statement now. It will say that Americans may see additional security measures visible here at home at key locations. They typically involve transportation hubs, landmarks, tourist attractions, and U.S. officials are waiting for more details now from their British counterparts who are assuming that this is a terror attack, as we've heard. Also, we find out it appears that Ariana Grande, the O2 Arena, is tweeting out now that she is scheduled to perform on Thursday and Friday at the O2 and will advise soon, they say, on the status of those shows, of what's going to happen next. It would seem that those may very well be canceled, but Tom, the O2 Arena, another large arena, but in London.
Exactly, and for those that were maybe here during the millennium, it was the point where a lot of the millennium celebrations took place. It was supposed to be a temporary structure, just like the Eiffel Tower was supposed to be a temporary structure, but it was eventually purchased by O2, the mobile phone service over here in the UK. And yes, there are it is really a very good hub. It's a very good venue for concerts and other entertainment things going on there all the time. And it's just, if you know where Greenwich is, it's right around the corner. So if you know where the Docklands area is, that great financial part of the east part of London, it is right down there, right on the edge of the Thames.
ABC's Tom Rivers live in London. Tom, we'll come back to you in a couple of minutes as we continue now to cover the unfolding situation in Manchester, outside Manchester Arena, that began about 4 hours ago outside of an Ariana Grande concert that had just ended as people were coming out of that concert when there was an explosion. Police are treating it as a possible terror attack. We know 19 people are dead. Many more are injured at this hour at 3 o'clock in the morning in London. I'm Alex Stone, and you're listening to live coverage from ABC News. 19 people are known to be dead. Around 50 others have been injured in a possible terror attack. The British Prime Minister saying it appears it was a terror attack. Police are saying they're treating it as one right now after an explosion outside of an Ariana Grande concert as people were leaving. Now, last night, UK time, tonight, US time, from that concert that was going on in Manchester at the Manchester Arena. ABC's Tom Rivers continuing our coverage here, live coverage from ABC News. And, Tom, the latest is what?
Well, the latest, we're sticking with the numbers we have, and they're now, what, an hour and a half old, something like that. 19 confirmed dead, 50, they say thereabouts, 50 injured in this terrible, terrible explosive incident. Let's call it that at this stage of the game. Certainly, the Prime Minister says it looks like an apparent terrorist attack, but that is not, as you know, confirmed yet. And maybe the police will be doing that shortly here when they hold a briefing in Manchester. While that's ongoing, there is a meeting being held right now, middle of the night here in London, the Home Office. That's the department in charge of law and order in the country. That's the domestic department in charge with that. And the justice, the police, you name it, they are briefing the senior officials there so that they get the latest on what is happening up in Manchester. So we're expecting the police to brief the public, as I say, quite soon, and find out exactly the latest on maybe what was the cause of this. We hope that might be revealed, and what goes forward for the city itself.
Greater Manchester Police tweeting out a little while ago, emergency services still working at the scene of the incident at Manchester Arena, continuing to ask the public to avoid that area. ABC News consultant, former FBI agent Steve Gomez joining us. And Steve, we found out that Ariana Grande apparently has at least two shows, coming up at O2 Arena later this week. We have to assume that those may be canceled from a security standpoint if, in fact, this is a terror attack.
Well, they're going to consider canceling them. I think it's going to depend on the investigation. If this is something that could be determined to be a terrorist attack where they are targeting these types of events, especially for Ariana Grande, then the question is there other intelligence that would indicate that those other venues would be at risk? And if so, if there's even the slightest risk possible, they'll cancel those. If this is determined to be some type of lone wolf and this was a random incident that they targeted this concert, then that's something else that they will factor in.
All right, Steve, I'm going to cut you off. Right now, police are updating the media. This is the update we've been waiting for. Let's listen in.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Ian Hopkins, the Chief Constable of Greater Manchester Police. Ariana Grande concert. Currently, we have 19 people confirmed to have lost their lives in the explosion and around 50 casualties that are being treated at 6 hospitals across Greater Manchester. My thoughts are very much with those that have been injured and lost their lives and their loved ones at this terrible time. We are doing all that we can to support them. Officers from Greater Manchester Police and Emergency Services are working at the scene and are supporting those affected. We are coordinating the operation here at Greater Manchester Police Headquarters. An emergency number is available for all those concerned about their loved ones or anyone who may have been in the area. The number is 0161 856 9400. We are currently treating this as a terrorist incident until we have further information. We are working closely with National Counter-Terrorism Policing Network and UK intelligence partners. This is clearly a very concerning time for everyone. We're doing all that we can, working with local and national agencies to support those affected as we gather information about what happened last night. As you will understand, we are still receiving information and updates, so we'll provide further detail when we have a clearer picture. I want to thank people for their support and would ask them to remain vigilant, and if they have any concerns at all, to report them to the National Anti-Terrorist Hotline. The number is 0800 789 321. It is important also that people here in Manchester avoid the area around Manchester Arena so that emergency services can continue to effectively deal with the incident at that location. Thank you very much.
Have there been any arrests, Chief Constable?
Attacks, et cetera, et cetera. So keep the eyes peeled, and they've got a line out there to help people, et cetera, et cetera. But they also, in all of these incidents, ask the public for its assistance. If they see something that is untoward or unusual, call a tip line, and the police will certainly jot it down, work through their priority list, and check out all the leads.
Yeah, Tommy, it seems somewhat unusual from a U.S. side that a police department would come out and make a very general statement and then walk away in silence, and people wouldn't be screaming out questions and they wouldn't be answering those questions. But it seems this is kind of how it's done in the U.K.
Oh, it's not, yeah, sometimes you'll get questions thrown, but again, often given the circumstances of this story, given the shock factor, I think certainly the British press are more inclined, if you will, to just take it on board for what it is at this stage of the game, and just try to work with what the police give without, jumping on a slew of questions afterwards.
Sure, yeah, because there are a lot of questions about what the method of this apparent attack may have been. Tom, stand by there. I want to go back to Steve Gomez, formerly of the FBI, now an ABC News consultant. Steve, what you heard there, does it change anything for you?
No, it doesn't change anything really at this point. It sounds like they are not. They don't have evidence that would confirm that it is for sure a terrorist attack. So what we can assume with that is no claims of responsibility. They don't have any kind of evidence from the scene or any kind of social media information that would indicate that it was a declared terrorist attack. But they are approaching it from that standpoint because of all the hallmarks, all the signatures. I mean, you're talking about a large venue, mass casualty, an explosive device of some type. That what that device is, that'll add to the investigation. There are still a lot of unanswered questions. One of the biggest things that I'm trying to figure out is it a suicide bomber or is it some type of device that was left? Now, if it's a device that was left, it's very concerning because you basically have somebody that's out there, one person, if not more, and as we're speculating, the potential for another attack to occur. Now, you factor that into, as we were talking about before, going to the presser, that there's other Ariana Grande concerts that are scheduled. I mean, there's some serious risk that could be posed to Ariana Grande, her fans, all the people that would attend such concerts. So there are a lot of different issues at play right now.
Sure. Could you have a bombing without it being a terror attack? Could they separate those two? It seems like at this point they have to know that this was, if it was, a bomb that went off.
I don't think at this point you can separate that. Now, what kind of terrorist organization or what was the intent of the individual in creating terror? That's another question because, is it ISIS? Is it Al-Qaeda? I mean, we've seen them committing attacks all over the place. But as we've seen here in the U.S., there are also domestic terrorist groups or domestic issues that are at play when there's some kind of an attack. And the biggest one that everybody thinks about is the Oklahoma City bombing involving Timothy McVeigh, where that wasn't a foreign terrorist organization, but something that was more driven by domestic terrorism issues. So the hallmarks of this type of incident lead you to believe that it's some type of terrorist incident, and that's how they're approaching it. Now the question is, what type of terrorist incident, what type of group, organization, or intent was meant by committing this attack?
If this remains classified as a terror incident, it's going to be the deadliest in the UK since 2005, the 7/7 bombings, which claimed the lives of 52 people. And we will have to see if it stays that way. There have been some reports that it may have been a suicide bomber, maybe not. None of that has been confirmed by police. Does it make a difference? You brought up that you want to know. Is it a telltale sign one way or the other, Steve?
Well, if it's a suicide bomber, it could potentially start and end with that suicide bomber. So then it would be a matter of, once they figure out who that suicide bomber is, what's that person's background? Is that person connected to other people? Is there a bigger conspiracy that is part of this attack? If it's not a suicide bomber and there was a person or persons that were involved in leaving that device there, then you have a great risk to public safety in the UK. And it's immediate. It's what we saw with the Tsarnaev brothers and the Boston bombing, where they were on the run. They were not there and captured. It wasn't a suicide bombing. They were now out there, and there was fear that another attack was going to occur. That is the environment that the UK and all of its citizens are going to be operating in until they figure out whether it's a suicide bomber or somebody who left it and they're still out there.
We have a statement now from Department of Homeland Security on the U.S. side on the incident at Manchester Arena. To read it to you, I'm going to read it to you cold here. The Department of Homeland Security is closely monitoring the situation at Manchester Arena in the United Kingdom. We're working with our foreign counterparts to obtain additional information about the cause of the reported explosion, as well as the extent of injuries and fatalities. U.S. citizens in the area should heed direction from local authorities and maintain security awareness. We encourage any affected U.S. citizens who need assistance to contact the U.S. Embassy in London, follow Department of State guidance. At this time, we have no information to indicate a specific credible threat involving music venues in the U.S. However, the public may experience increased security in and around public places and events as officials take additional precautions. We stand ready to assist our friends and allies in the UK in all ways necessary as they investigate and recover the incident. Our thoughts and prayers are with those affected by this incident. Rich Frankel, formerly of the FBI, now an ABC News consultant. Rich, at this point, what can the U.S. really do to help? We know the FBI has said it is standing by, ready to help. What can the assistance does the FBI stand to offer?
Yeah, so the legal attaché in London, we've got FBI agents throughout the world, and the legal attaché in London has offered his assistance through the agents that are there, as well as reach back to the U.S., and I'm sure what's going on now in the U.S. is that FBI agents, intel agencies, law enforcement, they are scanning our files. Just like they're doing in London and throughout the UK, we are now going through our files, and we're checking to see if there's anything that says Manchester, says Arena, anything that comes back to this date where, there was chatter saying that something might have happened. We're going back through every single thing and analyzing that. We're going out to sources, any sources that would have had information, again, against, arenas, has source information regarding ISIS, Al-Qaeda, whether they have plans coming up. That's the type of thing that the U.S. Intelligence Services and FBI are doing at this time.
And I have to assume partners around the globe are doing the same thing.
I am sure, all of the partners, all of NATO, all of Europe, they are doing the exact same thing. France, all the countries will start going back and going through every database they can. You've already asked about social media. They're going through their social media and, again, doing the same thing, going and looking for certain code words, certain connections that might be there that could lead to something indicating who might have done this. As Steve Gomez said, it could be a device that was left behind, like a pressure cooker. It could have been somebody walking with a backpack and dropped a backpack. It also could have been a suicide bomber, where the bomber pulls the string and pushes the button and just detonates himself. Until we know more from law enforcement, we won't know how that investigation will go forward. As Steve had said, if there are still people out there, are we going to have a Boston bomber chase? Where we're out there, where the UK authorities are looking for additional terrorists, or is this more, one where it's a suicide bomber where he has blown himself up, but really there is no further threat immediate based upon this incident?
The Department of Homeland Security in the U.S. saying that at music venues that there will be a heightened awareness, heightened security now. What can be done? There's already, you go to a concert, there are a lot of police officers around local. I'm sure the feds get involved at times as well. What's that next step that they now need to do in the short term?
So I think you're going to see just an increased presence, out there. I think you're going to see an increased presence immediately after the concert, greater than what you probably have seen in the past. There will probably be more undercover officers walking around looking for anything that is out of that is unusual. I have young, teenage children who go to concerts. Will I stop them from going to concerts? No, but does this give me pause? Does this make me contemplate the security at these locations? Of course it does. I'm like any other parent, and I can't believe, I can't even gather what the parents who have not found their kids are going through right now over in Manchester. So I think what you're also going to see is a lot more parents going to these locations. There are also in the U.S., I know of several organizations and even one school that teaches security about arenas and about sporting events. And I think you're going to start seeing those agencies and schools start giving more and more instruction on what to look for and how to react when you're at one of these events. I'm going to talk to my kids about what they should do if something like this happens.
And in London now, not in Manchester, but in London, Ariana Grande, she's scheduled to hold shows later this week at the O2 Arena. If they were to go on, what could they do at this point to secure that she is going to be okay and that the concert goers are going to be okay? Or is it just impossible that they can allow that to go on?
No, I mean, again, we have to see how this goes on. You still have a little bit of time to see what happens. Excuse me, from through the investigation. I think there are some things that they can do to increase the security and make people feel better about going to these events. But listen, you're never 100% secure. The UK, like the US, is an open society, and you can just never be 100% safe. So that is going to be a weighing of the threat and of the intelligence that they gather over the next several hours onto whether that concert does take place.
On a scene like this, the sun coming up in a couple of hours from now in Manchester, does that play a role? There are a lot of scenes that we cover day in and day out that they do wait for the sun to come up, and that answers a lot of questions. Or should they be able to move forward with this sun or no sun?
Oh, they're moving forward, sun or no sun. They're not waiting for the sun. I mean, will it make it easier to see things? Possibly, but I'm sure the trucks are out there with the lights. Manchester's a very popular city. The police department is a metropolitan police department that has all the bells and whistles that you need for this type of investigation. So I think they're going forward with this and not stopping. You will see a change in people that are coming out. They'll bring additional resources. It is 4 hours outside of London, so you may see additional resources come from other parts of the UK that will assist in the investigation. Usually that takes a couple of hours to spin up, in the other parts of the country, and then it takes the time to get there. So you will see an increase in the investigative tempo, but it's not because of the sunlight or nighttime. It's more that it just takes that amount of time to get people there to help with the investigation.
Rich, thanks. I want to bring Steve Gomez back into it, also formerly of the FBI, now an ABC News consultant. So he's talking about, Rich was there, about what happens over the next couple of hours, ramping up those resources, getting in the experts. Then what?
Well, it's really an organizational exercise. Rich and I, we've seen these situations happen many times in counterterrorism, running counterterrorism operations, him in New York, me in L.A., and you've got every single law enforcement official in the UK, intel officials as well, that are dedicated to this case right here, because they don't know if they have the suspect or suspects in custody, if the threat has been stopped. So everybody is basically all hands on deck, ready to work, do whatever they have to do. With that, you're talking about a massive amount of resources, experts. It is an organizational exercise. As I said, you have to now organize this case because you are going to have tons of evidence that is coming in, that is being analyzed, that is being reviewed on the scene there, online, interviews that are being done. All these victims that are able to speak are being interviewed, and they're going over all the different aspects of what they saw and what they heard. And so all that information is now pouring into a command center, and there's multiple command centers. There usually is one that's on the scene, one that's in another location, one that's at a headquarters building. All of this information is pouring in. And so you have to have this organized in a manner where you are able to get all this information, and the key bits of evidence and key information that is coming in from the various places is being put into basically the profile of this crime, the potential suspect or suspects that are involved. And you have to then be able to take that and build the investigation so you can now hunt down if there are other suspects out there. If there was a suicide bomber, did they have some support from somebody else out there? And you have to now solve the crime and prevent another attack, prevent another threat from impacting the UK and its citizens. And that's what they're dealing with right now. And it's a major, major undertaking, very similar to what we dealt with post 9/11.
Let's hypothetically say here that the attacker is dead, that they didn't make it through this attack. How does that make it more difficult if they were working alone or a very closed group, that now you don't know if there's anybody else out there versus going out and finding somebody who you can arrest, and then at least you know you have somebody in custody?
If it's a suicide bomber and you're going to figure out at some point who that person is. I mean, and from there, even though they're dead, you are now going to investigate that individual, every aspect of their life, going all the way back to potentially when they were a little kid and in grade school, interviewing people if the investigation is taking you to that point. You're going to learn everything about that suicide bomber, and that is going to determine whether there were relationships that individual had with other people that could be suspect, whether their mindset was developed at an early age to commit this type of act, or did it occur like 6 months ago or 2 years ago? And did it involve that person traveling to another country somewhere? And then now the investigation takes you over there. So having if it's a suicide bomber, that could potentially limit the amount of time and effort in the investigation because it could be finite, but it depends on what the investigation finds out. if it's not a suicide bomber and these people, a person or persons are out there, I mean, the risk to the public is just great because they clearly committed one attack and they may have the mindset and the resources and the capability of committing another and another. And we saw a lot of this in Paris and France with a number of the attacks that they had over there. So if this is the kind of terrorist organization, very similar to what happened in France, they're probably going to be following the same type of playbook as they did over there. And I'm sure that's what the UK officials and law enforcement are very concerned about, that they have something similar on their hands in this case here, and now they got to deal with it in the same way.
Have we found in the past that the webs of connections are pretty tightly wound and small? Thinking back again to San Bernardino, Tashfeen Malik, Syed Farouk, they didn't have a lot of connections. Didn't seem like they wanted to make a lot of connections except for some very close friends as they were planning this thing. Does it go wide from time to time, or is it often much closer knit than that as you're investigating these people?
Well, in the case of ISIS, they have basically given out instructions to their followers and sympathizers and supporters to kill wherever you are, to commit an attack using whatever tools available, as opposed to, guns, or explosives. Use knives, use cars, and we've seen those types of attacks occur in the last 6 months to a year. We were referencing Nice, we were referencing, Germany. I mean, there are a number of attacks where they're very crude. They don't even require any sophistication. What we have here in this situation, though, is that this is an explosive device that occurred that created this incident. That requires some sophistication. You have to have somebody who has the ability to build a bomb, and they succeeded. That bomb went off. So it's not as crude as what we've been seeing, lately with ISIS saying kill where you are. Now you have a situation where it's a little more sophisticated, and with that kind of sophistication, there's usually more than one person. It's very difficult for one person alone to learn how to build a bomb just off of the propaganda and the information that's online. It can be done. Don't get me wrong. It's possible, but it's more probable that there are others involved, whether there was some training or whether there was some coordination with other people. And that is what's concerning about this situation, because it's a little more sophisticated than a knife attack or a truck attack.
A bomb this powerful, if that's what it was, that shows some sophistication on the surface, doesn't it? That this took some know-how?
Absolutely. Oh, yeah, exactly. I mean, and that's where the bomb techs and their forensic examination of whatever materials are remaining, they're going to be critical with this investigation. And that's probably why they are limited in what they can release and talk about, because they're still going through that analysis right now with that explosive device and the remnants of the device, and they're gathering all that, and that could take a while. And so they're trying to figure out the level of sophistication. From that, they'll then look at how that kind of bomb could have been made, the materials that could have been used, what type of instructions are out there as far as how you could have built that bomb. Or maybe it's something that is some type of military-grade explosive that would have had to come from some other part of the world and would have required more sophisticated training, a bomb maker from someplace in the Middle East, say. That kind of information that the bomb techs are going to gather will factor into the investigation. And it adds to the sophistication of what occurred. And that's something they have to really examine when they're doing the forensics on these materials that are left there at the crime scene.
19 killed, 59 injured. Let's just say, for argument's sake here, that it does end up coming from somewhere else far away. How does the attack end up in Manchester outside of an Ariana Grande concert on a Monday night?
Well, what you really come back to is the sophistication of the explosive device. This is a major entertainment event, high profile, large gathering. This requires planning. If that is what we are dealing with, this is going to be something that would require a lot of planning. And we don't want to jump to conclusions yet. We have seen lone wolves that have attacked certain venues and locations. But it's the bomb and the severity of that bomb that makes you think, okay, this may not be something that one person can do. They might be able to do it if they travel to some other part of the world, receive bomb-making training from an expert, and that's happened before. And then they came back to the UK and were able to construct the device. Did they have access to the materials? Did they have access to the tools that were going to allow them to make that device, similar to the way they were trained someplace else in the world? Those are some big questions that need to be answered by the investigative agencies there.
Steve, your information invaluable there. Stand by. Steve Gomez, formerly of the FBI, now an ABC News consultant. We want to play for you again the short statement that police gave a few moments ago, updating the current situation in Manchester. Here's what police had to say.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Ian Hopkins, the Chief Constable of Greater Manchester Police. I can confirm the details of last night's incident as we currently know them. That around 10:33 p.m. we received reports of an explosion at Manchester Arena in the city centre. This was at the conclusion of the Ariana Grande concert. Currently, we have 19 people confirmed to have lost their lives in the explosion and around 50 casualties that are being treated at 6 hospitals across Greater Manchester. My thoughts are very much with those that have been injured and lost their lives and their loved ones at this terrible time. We are doing all that we can to support them. Officers from Greater Manchester Police and Emergency Services are working at the scene and are supporting those affected. We are coordinating the operation here at Greater Manchester Police Headquarters. An emergency number is available for all those concerned about their loved ones or anyone who may have been in the area. The number is 0161 856 9400. We are currently treating this as a terrorist incident until we have further information. We are working closely with National Counter-Terrorism Policing Network and UK intelligence partners. This is clearly a very concerning time for everyone. We're doing all that we can, working with local and national agencies to support those affected as we gather information about what happened last night. As you will understand, we are still receiving information and updates, so we'll provide further detail when we have a clearer picture. I want to thank people for their support and would ask them to remain vigilant, and if they have any concerns at all, to report them to the National Anti-Terrorist Hotline. The number is 0800 789 321. It is important also that people here in Manchester avoid the area around Manchester Arena so that emergency services can continue to effectively deal with the incident at that location. Thank you very much.
Once again, Chief Constable Ian Hopkins there from Manchester Police, going over everything as they know it at this hour. Reports of an explosion after the Ariana Grande concert tonight, U.S. time, last night, UK time. 19 people killed, 59 people injured, 6 hospitals across Greater Manchester. They are treating it as a terror incident at this point until further information, gathering that information about what happened there a number of hours ago. ABC's Tom Rivers live in London. Tom, what's the latest?
Yeah, still working from the line that it is an apparent terrorist attack. That's the word from Theresa May, the Prime Minister here. Sticking with that number, 19 dead and now I guess over 50 injured in this attack. The police not very forthcoming at this stage. One, it's early hours into their investigation. Two, there may be behind-the-scenes leads that they're following up that they don't want to disclose publicly at this stage of the game. But the worry is that hanging on the word be vigilant, the person or persons responsible, if in fact it is a terrorist attack, could still be out there and could be in a position to set off something else, either in Manchester or somewhere else here in the coming days. So, yes, people are being asked to, if they see something strange, pick up the phone, call the hotline, give a tip to the police.
New York Governor Andrew Cuomo sending out a note a moment ago saying, out of an abundance of caution, I've directed state law enforcement officials to step up security and patrols at high-profile locations in New York, including airports, bridges, tunnels, mass transit systems. Are you seeing anything like that across the UK at this point, Tom?
We may at first light. Certainly, there was if you want to use the word surge, we saw an already heavily policed London after the Westminster attack 2 months ago increased slightly. And we may well see that in Manchester. But again, the police numbers being what they are, you cannot increase that significantly. It's going to be increased a bit, but not a whole lot more. The big stuff is the stuff you and I don't see. The stuff going on behind the scenes, the intelligence gathering, the analysis, the old connecting the dots, if you want to use that phrase, to figure out who might have been talking about this, who was responsible, who potentially knew other people that might have been in the know, and again, who has the knowledge to put a device together. It's difficult, but that's where they are right now. That's the starting point. And of course, a good chunk of evidence at this stage of the game is going to be all that smartphone footage, CCTV footage in the immediate area, and they're going to be cracking on that right away, but they're going to have a lot of hours to go through.
Rich Frankel, formerly of the FBI, the note that I just read from Andrew Cuomo, exactly what we had talked about hours ago now, that was likely going to be happening on the U.S. side. Is it what you would expect, that now officials in the U.S. stepping up security at airports, bridges, tunnels, mass transit stations?
Yeah, that's exactly what we would expect them to do. Part of it, as you said, is PR. And not PR in the sense of public relations just for that, but it's to make people feel safe. You want people to be going to the airport. You want people going to the concerts and to the train station. You don't want them afraid. So if having a few more officers out there, a few more troopers, NYPD, local cops, then all the better, in my opinion.
And not to ask you a basic question, but what are they looking for?
Anything out of the ordinary. I mean, it sounds, a little basic, but really they are. They're looking to see if somebody isn't fitting in, just appears to be doing something that they probably should not be doing. They're looking to see if there are bags being dropped in certain locations. I mean, you go through Penn Station, you'll see a bag every so often just by itself. Somebody puts it down. If that person walks away, I think you're going to see a quicker response than you may have in the past. If people are dressed out of the ordinary, they may get a second glance. It doesn't mean that these people are going to be stopped and questioned, but it just means that the police and the other law enforcement there are going to be heightened. They're going to be looking for these things and maybe taking a second glance at items that they would not have in the past.
Tom, a moment ago, talked about a lot of what may be going on in the UK right now is what we don't see. What would be going on behind the scenes right now, something that may not be apparent?
The amount of analyst work going on right now, it would be staggering to people who are not aware of it. I mean, people have either stayed on from the day before, or have been called back into the office to start going through everything that they can to find out if there's any connection that could show that this was or was not a terrorist attack, and if it was it a planned terrorist attack? Was ISIS involved? Was Al-Qaeda involved? Or is there something online to show that somebody posted something on social media that would have indicated that it was a lone wolf who was going out and was leaving a note? All of this is going to be being looked at from behind, and then you have the agents and the case officers going out and talking to their sources and following up with those sources to find out, is there anything that they could learn from those sources? Was there anything heightened in the sense of there was chatter out there about a possible incident taking place, whether it was in Europe or whether it was specific to UK, and then even more specific to Manchester. These are all the things that are going to be going on in the background that no one's even going to, hopefully, no one will see, because, to be quite honest, there's no need for people, the general public, to see this going on.
And we have to assume they're getting inundated with phone calls and people saying, hey, I saw this, I saw that, here, see something, say something in the U.S. side. How do they decide what they're going to go out and spend their time tracking down?
So in the U.S., I ran the threat squad after 9/11, and then I worked counterterrorism with some great guys, during my career. And first off, every threat that's called in is investigated. It may not be investigated by the Joint Terrorism Task Force or the FBI, but it's investigated by law enforcement. So what they will do is they will prioritize it based upon indicia indicating its reliability and its threat level. And so they'll then go out and they'll investigate each and every one of those threats. And yes, you're right. During these times of incidents or possible incidents, you always see an uptick in the See Something, Say Something campaign. But law enforcement is prepared for that. You'll see more agents and JTTF investigators being kept on throughout the time after these incidents, because we know that's what's going to happen. And so we're ready for that, and they go out and they investigate each and every one of these leads.
Rich, stand by. I want to play for you Imran, who is waiting to pick up his partner and daughter outside of the Manchester arena as this happened. Spoke earlier to our partners at the BBC. Here's what he had to say.
Basically, I was just waiting outside on New Bridge Street. I got there about 20 past 10 maybe. I texted my partner at about 28 minutes past saying, telling her where I was. And she says, she just finished the last song, we're on our way out. So literally minutes later, I just heard this big explosion, and I just saw my partner and my daughter running towards me. And my daughter was screaming, crying, and my partner said, just quickly, let's go, quickly, there's been an explosion, let's go quick as we can. And I just couldn't get out of there quick enough. And I just saw these people come running down the stairs, screaming, pushing each other, screaming, crying, and it was manic. But I only heard one explosion. That's all I heard, one explosion.
So, Imran, your partner and your daughter had literally been seconds out of the building when it went off.
Yeah, literally. Well, she was at the top of the stairs when the explosion went off, and she said she grabbed hold of my daughter's hand and literally run down the stairs with her. Unfortunately, because my car's quite distinctive, she saw it straight away. And I was parked from the door, maybe 10 foot, if that, from the door where they were all exiting from. And there were just people running out in front of me screaming, and I just assumed that they'd seen a celebrity or seen, because minutes before, a coach had passed me, and I think it was Ariana Grande's coach. So I just thought maybe they'd seen a celebrity or maybe seen her and they're all coming running out, just to see it like some teenage girls do. But then when I saw my partner coming running towards me, screaming, and my daughter was crying, I just knew something wasn't right. But I'd already heard the explosion, but I thought it was a pyrotechnic going off. Like when you hear concerts and when it all finishes and something goes off, to say good night or whatever. I assumed it was that. I really, really did. Because you could hear the vibration from the music from when I was stood outside. But then obviously you heard this big explosion, and it was just manic after that. But we fortunately got away. But it's taken me over 2.5 hours to get back home.
That's extraordinary. And just as you were leaving the scene, could you see scores of people running out onto the street?
Oh, hundreds of people. It was just manic. They were just pushing each other out the way. People just trying to get out of the way. It was just manic. It really, really was, yeah.
And when you say it took you 2.5 hours to get home, you're in Leeds now, are you? How far away?
That's right.
For people who don't know the region.
About 45 miles. Well, it took me 45 minutes to get from my house to Manchester Arena, but yes, it took me over 2 hours to get home.
And did you have any idea, when now you hear what has happened and how terrible the night has been inside Manchester Arena? I mean, how do you respond to that? How do you react?
I feel sick. My partner won't even speak to one of our journalists on the phone. She's laid in bed. She's in bits. She's absolutely in bits.
she's saying if minutes later I could have been caught up in that, I could have split up from our daughter. You know, her daughter comes to the car, she's cried herself to sleep. She actually wanted to sleep in bed with us, and she's 12 years old, and she's been looking forward to this since Christmas. This was a Christmas present for the tickets that we bought at Christmas, and she's been counting the days down, and she's had a great evening. And this was, you know, it's crazy. It's absolutely crazy what's going on. You know, kids are at a concert, and there's some absolute lunatics doing what they're doing. It's crazy.
And I'd imagine that there were many, many other girls like your daughter that age who were fans of Ariana Grande.
Yeah, I mean, like I say, I got there about 20 past 10, and it were already busy outside with people leaving early. I assumed it must have finished early, and because I texted my partner saying it must have finished because there's literally, I'd say there were about 70, 80 people already outside. And she's like, no, the last song's still on. She texted me back saying, no, the last song's still playing. It's just about to be over and we'll be out. And so I texted her at 10:28, and she texted me back. And I left that scene within 4 minutes. I'd gone. I just quickly sped off because I was right next to the traffic lights. They were on green. As soon as I got in the car, I just got my way through everyone and made it through. Really, fortunately.
Did you imagine that there were casualties inside from what you heard and saw?
No. I didn't until we just got near the motorway and we'd heard on the news that there'd been fatalities, and you know my daughter obviously heard it on the radio, my partner heard it on the radio, and they both just burst out in tears, both of them.
For a 12-year-old girl at her first concert, this must be very traumatic.
Oh, she's in bits. She's like, I want to get out of Manchester, Dad, and just get me home. She's absolutely in bits. She really, really is. You know, I mean, we've got home. We've been home since I think about 12:30 when we got through the door, 1:45, and you know we can't even go to sleep. We're not even tired. It's just going around in his head. What could have happened? What's happened? You know, and what's happened to the people? I've just read on the news about the kids in the hotel. You know, they can't find the parents and the guardians. It's absolutely crazy. And that could have been my daughter. You know, and I wasn't even going to pick them up. They were going to get the train home, and I'd meet them in Leeds. But I decided to go pick them up, and I'm just so glad I was there to get them. You know, it's just what's going on in our heads now is what if, and it shouldn't be like that, but it is, unfortunately.
Imran, what did your partner say she experienced when she was rushing out? What was it like? What was the explosion like from her perspective?
She just said she just heard this bang, and she just literally grabbed hold of my daughter's hand and just run down the stairs. That's it. That's all she said. She was literally feet away from me. She got to the top of the stairs where the exit was, and the explosion happened. And like I say, it was just one eye. We just heard one explosion. Definitely heard one explosion. And like I said, I were from the explosion, and when she heard it, to getting in my car, it were seconds, because I were parked literally 10 foot from the exit, from the door, on New Bridge Street, right from the door. I were parked literally across the road from the door. So there were, you know, she didn't have time to react. She literally grabbed my daughter's hand and saw all the people screaming. And she, you know, as soon as the explosion happened, though, my daughter started screaming, she said, and started crying. So she grabbed hold of her and just literally run down the stairs with her and got away. But they knew something wasn't right. They definitely knew something wasn't right. They weren't sure what it was, but they knew they said something wasn't right.
Imran, an emotional story he told there about his 12-year-old. She got the tickets for Christmas, and then this happened as she and his partner came running out, jumped in their car, and they got out of there. We have new information we can report right now based on preliminary information. According to a senior law enforcement official briefed on the investigation, U.S. law enforcement officials have been informed that the leading theory is that the Manchester Arena incident was the work of a suicide bomber. They caution this is preliminary information. The investigation still in the earliest stages. That can change, but they do now believe that this may have been the work of a suicide bomber. ABC's Tom Rivers live in London. There had been rumor that this was the case, but now, Tom, senior law enforcement officials telling us that it does appear that this may have been a suicide bomber.
Exactly, and if in fact this proves to be true, a new chilling chapter in the UK. We've seen various attacks here over the years. We've seen the different kinds of bombs, different kinds of weapons, rifles being used, knives being used, but the suicide bombers, that's a chilling development.
Tom, thank you very much. We know you're going to hit the road, head toward the scene there. I want to head back to Rich Frankel, formerly of the FBI, now ABC News consultant. And Rich, now that we know this, that apparently senior law enforcement officials have been briefed on the investigation, the belief being that it is a suicide bomber, how does that change the investigation?
So the investigation, at least for the time being, is not really going to change that much because we have to find out if it's a lone bomber. If he was by himself, whether self-radicalized or some other way, that will indicate that, okay, the investigation will go off in that direction. However, if he's one of a cell, this investigation is going to go on full speed to try to track down who else worked with this individual. Where did he get the equipment to make the bomb? Were there people who assisted him in that? How did this all take place? What was the planning like? So, at least for the time being, it doesn't really change the focus of the investigation in the sense of they need to find out what led to it, who was involved. And if it is in fact, as the senior official said, that this is possibly a suicide bomber, you're going to see an increase in the tenacity and drive of the investigation.
Does it make it more difficult, though, that now your attacker would be dead, that you're not going to have somebody to go out and put in handcuffs and know, okay, you've got the person that pushed that button?
Well, it will in that sense, but then you also have the now that you have a suicide bomber, there'll be DNA at the scene. The DNA may be able to identify who the bomber was. Once you've identified who the bomber is, now you're going to go back to the bomber's apartment or wherever that person was living, and you're going to be able to go through that intelligence. And through that intelligence, you're then going to go online, and you're going to go through the social media. And from the social media, you're going to track back to the people that they were involved with. Really, the way all the terrorism investigations have progressed, this is going to be no difference in that sense. So there is a lot of investigation to do, and just because it's a suicide bomber doesn't make it quicker or harder. You just go out about it in a slightly different way. But again, the general principles of the investigation will be the same as they've always been.
The investigation into the actual bomb, does it add a new component to how that bomb was built and the sophistication of it, that it had to be somebody knowing what they were doing? It wasn't just putting together a pipe bomb. It wasn't throwing things in a pressure cooker, that this is somebody who had to know what they were doing to build this?
There was definitely more skill needed, and so they will be looking at that. They'll also be looking at how, as Steve Gomez said, the fingerprint or the way in which it was made will be a indicator as to whether this was something that was put together by somebody with a little bit more skill, but really on that person's own, or was this something that was needed certain type of explosive, powder or, equipment. So you needed more and more people to be involved. And also, let's remember that, we shouldn't call it, the suicide bomber a man or a female. We don't know who this bomber could be. It could be male, could be female. Really, we have no idea at this point in which direction that will go.
Very true indeed. We just got a statement from Ariana Grande's manager saying, "Tonight our hearts are broken. Words cannot express our sorrow for the victims and families harmed in this senseless attack. We mourn the lives of children and loved ones taken by this cowardly act. We are thankful for the selfless service tonight of Manchester's first responders who rushed toward danger to help save lives. We ask all of you to hold the victims, their families, and all of those affected in your hearts and prayers." There are also some unconfirmed reports now that Ariana Grande may be suspending her world tour in the wake of what is appearing now to have been a terrorist attack. And Rich Frankel, if it is a suicide bomber, as one senior U.S. official is telling us it appears it may have been, in an open area, How do you stop that? Whether it be in the UK, in the U.S., in an area where you've gone beyond the security barricades, anybody could walk up, could have something underneath a jacket. How do you stop it?
As several people have said tonight, it's almost impossible to stop that. Yes, you can push the security barriers back. You can have more police presence to look for something that's out of the ordinary. But we are an open society. Everyone is not getting searched at every street corner, and therefore it is impossible to make an area like that 100% safe. But they can do certain things. Again, they can have roving patrols. They can have both uniform and ununiformed presence in the areas. They can have the bomb sniffing dogs out. There are things that can be done to make it harder for somebody to do something like this. But again, you're never going to be 100% safe. I know, in Nassau County, they're going to be having the special operations and criminal intelligence response teams go out and do local patrols and go out to train stations and other large gathering places for the next several days. So at least for the time being, they will have an increased presence. And I'm sure not only in Nassau, but you're going to see that throughout the United States, throughout the UK, throughout Europe. Local police are going to be doing the same exact thing to try to not only to make it safer, but to give the general public that knowledge that they are out there looking for these people.
Ariana Grande has just tweeted again saying, all it says is broken. From the bottom of my heart, I am so sorry. I don't have words. No doubt for U.S. officials, Rich, that there will be lessons learned out of every one of these, that there are lessons that are seen from what goes on elsewhere, and they can say, okay, we need to change things here at home.
That, without a doubt, you're 100% correct on that. As terrorism has changed, counterterrorism has changed. And so in each one of these, there'll be an after action by, not by just the Manchester police, but by the FBI, by joint terrorism task forces, by intelligence services throughout the world, who are going to look at this and going, how could we have handled this better with 20/20 hindsight? What can we learn so that this particular incident, we can do our best to protect that down the line. So, this is going to be looked over and over again, just as every terrorist incident in the past has been done. In New York, between the subway bomber and the Times Square bomber and the other incidents, every time this happens, there's an after action, and we learn from those incidents on how to make things safer. And I'm sure that's going to happen again.
Before we let you go, Rich, final thoughts. We're maybe an hour and a half or so away from the sun coming up in Manchester. Where do we go from here, and what do we need to know now?
So now we need to know, is this person if in fact it was a terrorist, was it a lone suicide bomber, or is that person part of a cell? So they're going to really start digging in and going through the explosive area using forensic to determine if they can get any forensics that can indicate DNA. Are there any other telltale signs that the person had, whether it's the clothing or maybe the person actually had, a wallet? Are those just simple items that they can find at the explosive location that will help them determine who this person is? And from that point, the investigation is just going to expand dramatically through what they learn from where the person has resided and who the person's contacts have been, where the person has traveled, if the person has traveled. So all of that is going to be happening, from this time forward.
Very quickly, how soon could we get DNA back?
You can get some type of sample fairly soon. I don't have the exact timeline, but it's not immediate. It's not like, okay, we got DNA, let's go make a determination right away. It does take a time period for that sample to be first delivered to a lab, then for it to be identified, and then it to be placed into the database.
Rich Frankel, formerly of the FBI. Rich, thank you for your help tonight as this has been unfolding. 19 people confirmed dead. 50 others have been injured after an apparent suicide bomber attack. May have been a suicide bomber, according to senior law enforcement officials who have been briefed in Manchester outside the Ariana Grande concert, again killing 19 people. I'm Alex Stone, and you've been listening to live coverage from ABC News.